Very warm welcome, everybody. Today, I have somebody with me who is a cricketing legend, somebody who brought grace, style, and panache to the crease, and now he brings that same grace and style to the commentary box. Very warm welcome to David Gower.
Saj, thank you. How very kind, very kind.
I mean it, David, and I think most people would agree with my sentiments.
Well, I always have to leave those judgments to others, but always nice to hear. I can tell you, I can promise you that anyway.
David, first, I'd like to ask you, you've just recently returned from Pakistan for the Pakistan versus England T20I series where you were out commentating. How was the trip? How was the experience of being in Pakistan?
Yeah, it was good. I think a lot of people are aware that I've spent quite a lot of time in Pakistan over the last couple of years, largely doing PSL, which has been fun and productive. And to go there for international cricket made a bit of a step up. Now, I mean, the big difference, I think, with watching the international matches was that very, very obviously, one of the main concerns in Pakistan with the history of the last couple of decades is security. And as we were in hotels alongside the teams, we were witnessing some very, very tight security, which meant that as broadcasters, we were also politely asked to be aware of the situation, asked if we went out to try and take or try and arrange or had to arrange a security detail to accompany us. So that was the obvious restriction. Apart from that, the usual thing applies as far as I'm concerned. Having spent all that time out there, one always gets a warm welcome. The outstanding reaction from everyone in Pakistan, given that 90% of people seem to be cricket fans, is one of welcome. And so if you're around the hotels, even out and about, people recognize you, then the one or the two words you hear most often are thank you, in the context of thank you for coming, nice to have you here. I say it's all been very, very welcoming. And of course, the enthusiasm for the game means that, as we saw with the T20I series, in the 7 games that were played, Karachi 4, Lahore 3, that was almost the result, of course, there were full crowds, full houses. So, you can tell, it's just so obvious how enthusiastic the Pakistan public is and how welcoming they can be as well.
Did you get to see much of the real Pakistan apart from the hotel rooms and the local places that you would visit? Did you get to see much outside of that area?
Not so much, partly because of the security angle. We were allowed. I went out to visit friends. Co-commentators would host. The production company people would host. There'll be restaurants, of course, which are open for business. I'm very glad to see people. So there's a little bit of sightseeing. For instance, in Lahore, one of the restaurants that offered us, as it were, hospitality, great hospitality, was Haveli, which is right next door to the mosque. The big mosque there, and in sight of the Minar. So you've got actually a really good little area just to get a little look at some of the culture of old Pakistan there. And when I went out there, actually it was the night I was leaving before I was due to catch a plane later that night. I had a guided tour of the mosque, which of course is fascinating, just to have a look into the culture, look into what happens, look into the history, which is of course long-standing and vibrant. But the opportunities to get out and about were not many. So when I go back in December with the test matches in mind, it'll be a mixture of commentary again, which of course I'm looking forward to, and also hosting a tour group, because it's high time that we showed Pakistan to cricket lovers from this part of the world. So the company with which I'm associated, which is Black Opal, will be taking a group of possibly 20, that sort of number, and they'll be doing Multan, Karachi, with a bit of a stay in Lahore in the middle. And I will join up with them in between other duties. So we'll have a chance to have a little look around, for instance, in between those 2 games. And that's what I'm looking forward to as much as the cricket in December, is just the chance to get out and about a bit more. When I was in Islamabad a year ago or so with Game on Hay, again, precious little time off, precious little time to get out and about. But the lovely girl that is Sana Mir, who was working on the programme with me, when we had a couple of spare days, she just took us out and about. We had a look at the history of textile. We had a look at some of the arts and crafts in Islamabad. And there is a lot to catch up on, a lot to catch up with, and a lot to see as and when you're allowed to do so.
You mentioned the cuisine that you experienced. Moin Ali made a comment about how he preferred the Karachi cuisine to Lahore. Do you agree with him?
No, I like both. I mean, one of my great things when it comes to food and wine, of course, wine not exactly a speciality in that part of the world, but one of my great things when you're looking at all those sorts of subjects is the variety. I like the variety. And I mean, for instance, when I was in Islamabad staying at the Serena Hotel a year ago, one of the restaurants in the hotel deliberately highlights the different cuisines from the 7 or 8 different regions of Pakistan. And it does it so very deliberately to point out that there are these varieties, these changes, these subtle changes. I mean, the truth is we had some very good food in Karachi and we had some very good food in Lahore. And I know in Lahore, when those remarks were reported, there was consternation. That pride, the pride that each region has is, again, equally evident as much as the love for the game of cricket across the entire nation. So the pride in Lahori food was slightly dented by Mo's remarks. And I think everyone that was there was going, really? Because we ate well. I mean, there's some delicious food there. So again, just as a pointer to anyone who's thinking of coming out, say, in December, there is lots of very good food, slightly subtly different food, sometimes more obviously different food across the country. So just, enjoy it.
Coming on to the cricket then, David, you obviously saw the series, the hard-fought series between England and Pakistan, which England obviously won 4-3. What did you make of the Pakistan T20I team and their approach and tactics?
Well, again, having watched PSL a lot over the last couple of years, a lot of the players are familiar. There are obviously 1 or 2 missing. I mean, the big name missing, of course, was Shah Afridi, who's an outstanding opening bowler, one of the best in the world in all formats, not just T20. But you've got 2 of the great one-day players, not to mention Test players in Babar Azam and Mohammad Rizwan. I mean, there is always this debate when you're in Pakistan about the tactics at the top of the order, because neither are built like Chris Gayle, so neither are going to be smacking it out of the ground in the first over for consecutive sixes. But they have a method of playing which, if everyone else around them understands it and contributes, they can still make big totals. I mean, one of the interesting things was watching, for instance, the middle order, there's a lot of debate too about the Pakistan middle order, which if Babar and Rizwan, for instance, as they did in Karachi in about game 3, knocked off a couple of 100 runs without getting out and winning the game. Well, of course, it doesn't give your middle order any chance to shine. But when they did have to come in and contribute, you could see there was a sort of a little bit of a lack of confidence, which is partly not having time in the middle and partly the step up from something like a domestic franchise league, albeit a very good one, to international cricket and the expectations of a cricket-loving nation. Because, yes, of course, when they're playing PSL, all the franchises have their support and it's fervent. When you're playing for Pakistan, you've got the entire nation either supporting you or on your back. And some of the criticism, for instance, on social media was very, very stark indeed when things didn't go right. So there are decent players there. I mean, Iftikhar, Asif Ali, these people who, Asif, for one, can hit the ball a long, long way on his day. But when you've got slightly better bowling up against you and people who've looked into the way you play, all the information, of course, is available worldwide nowadays on each and every player pretty much. Suddenly the pressure tells. So they're still a very good side, Pakistan. And when they're at full strength again, of course, even better. So just Shah coming back into computation, maybe Fakhar Zaman as well, and people like that, they can strengthen that 11, that final 11. I suppose the honest truth is that England, yes, they won the series and they won it convincingly right at the end there in Lahore. They could have done it even more convincingly with a couple of games where the chase petered out right at the last moment. And they will look back on that England thinking they should have won 2 more games and made it a better series victory. But as a spectator out there, as a commentator, it made it much more interesting to have it level pegging throughout and making that final game a genuine final to see who won the series. And I think both teams will have learnt a lot from it. England, I think, took more out of it because they finished on a high, finished on a roll. They knew they had more players coming in, as it were, first pick players coming in for the World T20. So they've arrived in Australia as we speak, showing a lot of confidence and a lot of good form.
Given Pakistan have now, as you say, got Shaheen Shah Afridi back, looks like Fakhar Zaman is back as well, fully fit. Their full strength 11, how do you think they will cope with this T20 World Cup? Are they amongst the favourites, or do you see them as one of the lesser teams, with all due respect?
Yeah, with all due respect, which is plenty, they are not favourites, no. I mean, they're a good team, yes, but they're not favourites. I think playing in Australia tilts the balance more towards the home countries. Australia and New Zealand maybe have, should we say, more experience of being at home. Having said that, again, one of the things that's so true about world cricket at the moment is because so many teams travel so often, alien conditions are no longer quite so alien. So people already have ideas of what they need to do and the sort of pitches they'll play on. But yes, Australian pitches tend to be different to Asian pitches. So yes, it's a different way of playing. Good pace comes into play more often. Spin is still interesting. But I think if you look at Pakistan, Australia, even though they've been beaten by England in the two warm-up games, or not warm-up games technically, sorry, the series they played before the World T20, Australia will enjoy themselves at home normally. They normally raise their game. And we saw it actually in the last World T20 in the UAE. Australia, coming through to win at the end, time their run perfectly. So then they're good at doing that sort of thing. But I think Australia are up there, top four, England are up there, top four, possibly New Zealand, possibly Pakistan, possibly India, of course. I mean, that's sort of top 5 or 6 even, because South Africa on a good day as well, I would say, are, candidates for that top 4. I mean, that's the hardest thing with this whole T20 thing, because you can have a great build-up. And again, just referring back to a year ago, it looked as though Pakistan and England would be runaway finalists. It looks as though they'd both played the best cricket in the groups and both had the best current form until they got the semi-finals, and both games went the same sort of way, where they both lost to a side chasing. Now, again, those sort of things might be very different in Australia, but those experiences are handy. So yes, Pakistan I would put in the middle of the group somewhere.
Coming back to the Babar Azam and Mohammad Rizwan opening partnership, there's a lot of debate at the moment in Pakistan as to their approach. It seems to be a conservative approach compared to the likes of Hales and Butler and Warner, Finch, etc. Do you think that will work? And does it work for you, or should they be a little bit more aggressive at the top of the order?
Well, I mean, okay, when you watch them bat together, I'll make the point again, then neither of them are absolute powerhouses. They rely on what you might call genuine cricketing skills, so the art of timing and placement. They've both got an extraordinary array of shots when they need it. And the thing about Babar, for instance, as the example, I mean, they're both electric runners between the wickets. So tip and run works as well, puts a different sort of pressure on the fielding side at the start. But yeah, they're not going to be the ones that are going to be. I used the example of Chris Gayle earlier. Chris Gayle was the sort of guy who would have a look for 4 or 5 balls, tee it up, and probably put one in the stands by the end of the first over on a good day, and then follow up with plenty more. They're not that sort of player. But you can only work with what you've got. Now, the way I've looked at it in PSL and over those T20 eyes is that someone like Babar, he times his acceleration. I mean, he knows that if he's still there at 10 overs, he's got shots enough to find gaps and hit boundaries. They might not be big sixes all the time. He can clear the ropes. Of course he can. But he's going to find the boundaries and he's going to accelerate. So if he stays there, his strike rate is good enough. Now, if you've got, and then you have to work, I mean, each and every team works with the resources it's got. So, for instance, that middle order, the big hitting middle order, it's never easy, I'll give them that, to suddenly just come in and tee off. In the last 3-4 overs, say, right, we need a couple of sixes and over just to get ourselves up to whatever it might be, 170, 180, 200. Never easy to do that, but they have to accept, in a sense, that that is their role. That if they have the platform built at a certain rate, say it's at 125 as a sort of strike rate, which is pretty much average for Babar and Rizwan if they get runs together. You say it's that. Well, if they want to get it up to 150, 200 in the closing overs, well, someone has to open their shoulders and clear the boundary. And I've even seen in PSL, I've even seen Shine Shah Afridi do that to magnificent effect. And in fact, in the last PSL final, or in the qualifiers before it. Now, if you can blend all that together as a team and understand that together as a team, you can still make the sort of totals that keep you in a match and therefore in a series and therefore in a World Cup. And then, of course, you need the bowling to shape up as well. I mean, and this is the other side of it. Pakistan has huge resources with young fast bowlers, talented, quick, athletic, but some of them are still learning. Let's face it. You're each and every day you play this game, you learn something new. So, the sort of cleverness that you get with experience, so the ability maybe to guess more often, because so often there's a question of guessing what the batsman is going to do next. And the ability to guess right more often comes from reading a game and reading people. And you can't, again, it relies on the blend. If you've got, say, 180 on the board, which in many cases can be a winning score in T20, and you've got the bowling that's going to work to defend that, then that bowling needs to click into place. If you have a couple of bad overs, anyone can chase down these runs nowadays, as we've seen so often. So it is about trying to get each and every little percentage into place, whether it be the batting, the balance in the batting, whether it's the makeup of the bowling. I mean, for instance, in that T20 series, it took Babar halfway through the series until he bowled Iftikhar for his full 4 overs. And suddenly remembered that Iftikhar actually does the job. And a couple of those games that Pakistan won, Iftikhar went for nothing in his 4 overs. Now, that's something sometimes which, for all the right reasons, you might think there's a vulnerability. Suddenly you try it, suddenly it works. You learn something about yourself as captain. You learn something more about the team. And you reaffirm the ability of a man who's been left on the sidelines of the ball for the first 3-4 games. So that sort of adaptability is also crucial to the team. And I think, for instance, Babar as a captain, is trying to, he's having to learn to be more himself, to be more assertive and more in control. And I think you'll find that teams, when the captain, as it were, grows into himself, has more confidence in himself, teams respond to that sort of thing. Because however much you trust teams and the members of those teams to bring you the right advice at the right time, in the end, like a government, like a sports team, if the man at the top is seen to be in command, then that sort of spreads through a team, and that builds confidence through a team. So I think this whole thing is all about the balance. The whole thing is about understanding roles. And in a way, it doesn't help to have the debate going on constantly in the background about that sort of balance. In a way, you just have to let the guys get on with it. And when they win games, you pat them on the back and say, well played.
How fantastic is it to see the England team going to be touring Pakistan for a test series as well? David, you mentioned that earlier, that you'll be there. How much are you looking forward to that, and how important is it for England to be finally out there playing test cricket?
Well, it is hugely important. I have been one of those people who was vocally and hugely critical of their decision to abandon the shortest of tours just over a year ago on very spurious grounds. I mean, that was meant to be the ultimate political gesture to say, look, thank you, Pakistan, for coming to us. A recognition of the fact that Pakistan has put its house in order, a recognition of the huge love for cricket in that part of the world. And when they abandoned that tour over a year ago now, I thought that was, the best word I can put to it is cowardly. It was very, very insensitive. So the T20 series was notable for lots of things, including huge efforts to rebuild those bridges. We had members of the ECB out there. The deputy chair was out there speaking to Ramiz and saying all the right things. Our High Commissioner in Islamabad, Christian Roberts, he was also hugely apologetic for the diplomatic error because he was right on side with the tour. He was responsible. High Commissioner in Islamabad was responsible for the security advice to the England team, and his advice was that it was safe to tour. So that was ignored by the ECB. Now, the fact that we've been back to T20s, I say that a couple of weeks was a very, very good couple of weeks for all sorts of reasons, including just securing diplomatic relations. So the test series is equally important. on similar grounds, because again, it's a validation that Pakistan is a perfectly safe place to tour. Maybe perfectly, who knows? You can get trouble in any country in the world. We've seen terrorist attacks in Sydney. We've seen multiple attacks in London. You see events all around the world. So, I mean, Pakistan is well aware, because of the spotlight being on them, that they have to keep that security absolutely rigid. So apart from that, which is an acknowledgement of history, the Australians proved it earlier this year that they could have a perfectly good 3-match series down there. They had to work mighty hard for their victory. Everything else was very smooth on and off the field. And England going there, I think, is equally important. I think, the ties between these two countries need to be ratified. And I'm looking forward to it. I mean, the interesting thing really is what happens on the field, because England's latest approach to Test cricket, it has to be examined, has to be consistently examined around the world. And I suspect they're going to try and do much the same sort of stuff, play the same style of cricket as they did in summer. You can tell that in a way from the selections. Attacking batsmen being picked with little or no Test experience to be part of that squad. So the intent is obvious. The interesting thing will be how easy or difficult it is to win games out there playing that way on pitches that will be probably fairly flat, not to say very flat. Maybe good for the batsman, and it depends how much pace and bounce there is, whether it allows the same sort of attacking style. And it'll be an attritional time for the bowlers who have to work mighty hard for their wickets. So how it'll pan out, I think it'll be very interesting to see, actually.
And finally, David, you've toured Pakistan back in the 1980s, obviously a long time ago. A very successful tour, may I add, for yourself. I looked at the numbers and you did quite well out there. You've been out there commentating for the PSL. You've been out there recently, as I said before, for the T20 series. In your experience overall, how does it feel to be playing cricket in Pakistan? What's unique about cricket in Pakistan? And, how is your whole experience of being out there in Pakistan for cricket?
It's not necessarily unique to Pakistan. It's a sort of pan-Asian thing. If you look at cricket in India, in Sri Lanka, in Bangladesh, there is just that enormous enthusiasm for the game. I think Pakistan, the enthusiasm is probably heightened, or definitely heightened, because of the decade where fans in all around Pakistan, be it Karachi, Lahore, Multan, Peshawar, Rawalpindi, wherever they are in Pakistan, they haven't had, up until the last 2 years now, live cricket in their stadium. So the fact they've got live cricket back, be it PSL, be it now the international cricket, I think has been just an immense release for them. And as soon as, throw into the mix over the last couple of years, COVID as well, which meant that we started PSL a couple of years ago with 0 crowds, built it up 25%, 50%, 100%. They've allowed the fans back in. They've loved being part of it again. And there is there is this slight contrast, because there is, in all honesty, sort of the huge enthusiasm, the clamour, the noise you get at the stadiums when the games are on. So if you walk outside, for instance, you can be in a commentary box and slightly insulated from the noise. If you walk outside, the noise just hits you. And that is, it's not necessarily absolutely unique to Pakistan, but it's very much part of the atmosphere there. And yet at the same time, everywhere else, you have this sort of gentleness. Because, as you will know, and as people who understand that part of the world will know as well, one of the key sort of social factors of Pakistan as a nation overall is that ability to welcome people into their homes, into their country. And if I walk around, for instance, we stay in busy hotels. For instance, Karachi, Lahore. You stay in busy hotels. Yes, there is this sort of tight ring around the players. Not so much around us as commentators, but there are people coming in each and every day to do business, to meet, to be sociable. And the overwhelming feeling is that it is gentle and welcoming. And there's no feverish excitement like that. So there is this slight contrast, but the overall experience therefore becomes a very, very good one, because you feel welcome, you feel safe, you feel as though, the other little aspect too is that because people like me hadn't been there for so long, be it as players or as commentators. Just people coming into the country as a sort of vote of confidence. That's what it is, really. Is seriously appreciated. So, I mean, as I say, people come up to me in hotel lobbies, and it's the usual stuff, of course, selfies, that sort of thing, which, of course, have long since overtaken autographs. And it's still one of those things around the world is, middle-aged men are not very good at managing mobile phones, working out which side the camera is and where it's pointing. But eventually, when you get it done, it's all done with a smile. So, I mean, that is just modern life, as it were. But one of the great things that, one of those two words again that are said so often are thank you. Followed by thank you for coming.
Thank you very much for your time, David. It's been an absolute pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, hope you enjoyed that. That was the legend, David Gower, who we will see on commentary for the Pakistan versus England Test Series, and then obviously for the PSL as well. Appreciate your time, David. Thank you very much.
That was my pleasure. Take care.